This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview.
Thanks for joining me today, Olivier. Firstly, please can you give an overview of Atome Energy and its current projects?
Thanks for having us, Stuart. So Atome is the first company listed on the stock exchange in the UK, focused on the production of green hydrogen and green ammonia. So whilst you have seen on the exchange companies focused on the technology, like ITM, like Ceres Power, up until now, really no company was focused on delivering the hydrogen and the ammonia which is needed. And we listed back in December. We are starting with two areas, one in Paraguay, where we have up to 400 megawatts of project in the pipeline. And actually, we started front-end engineering and design on our first phase of 60 megawatt after signing a power purchase agreement. And that comes from hydroelectric power. Currently, we have another project in Iceland where we are still negotiating the power purchase agreement. And over there, the potential is up to 100 megawatts coming from geothermal power.
Fantastic. Well, could you give us more of an idea of the current market opportunity for the production of hydrogen and ammonia?
So if we were to quote, Goldman Sachs, who did a pretty thorough analysis of the market opportunity, they're saying it's about a $10 trillion opportunity, trillion with a T, by 2050. The reality, it's because hydrogen is a molecule, it's the easiest way to replace hydrocarbons as we know it, so oil and gas. So we're talking about displacing about 20% of all oil and gas production in our systems and replacing them with green hydrogen molecules. So we're talking about 20 million barrels a day, which at over $100 a barrel today, it gives you a sense of the scale of the opportunity. And it's an opportunity which will move quite fast as well. Because whilst we're talking a lot about electrification of our energy systems, the reality is, you need to build more power plants, you need to build more transmission lines. Whilst if you are using hydrogen and liquid ammonia, essentially you are using existing systems, existing pipeline systems which just need to be upgraded, tanks, LPG type of tanks. So the adoption of hydrogen as a energy source and also as a chemical component we see it as going a lot faster than the electrification.
Can you explain your approach then as a company, the business model of producing hydrogen and ammonia and getting it to market?
So our business model, actually, we started that quite a number of years ago. We were incubated within an oil and gas company called President Energy, which had exposure in Latin America, especially in Paraguay. And my previous job, I was chief investment officer at the World Bank's International Finance Corporation, which is the private investment arm of the World Bank. And in my responsibilities, obviously beyond the total energy portfolio that we were managing, was also finding ways to grow new markets. And hydrogen we saw as extremely interesting, but we were looking about how to accelerate. And the way to accelerate is you have to identify a few places where you have existing access to power and existing infrastructure, which means an existing market. So whilst at the moment you see a lot of work in Europe, in the UK, and other places about creating, let's call it, a lot of enabling environments, a lot of subsidies, because they realize they need to build new power supply, green power supply. They need to essentially find also how to connect these things to the market, how to build a lot of the infrastructure around it. What we did at Atome was identified the places where you could have that power in excess available today in an environment where you could pay a very low price of power because that power had nowhere else to go, which is why Paraguay is front and center, because Paraguay is the place where not too many people know it. It's in South America. It's actually a landlocked country, but it's the world's fourth largest exporter of soybean. It has a very deep agricultural sector. But more importantly, also, it is the home to the second largest hydroelectric dam in the world. So we're talking about 14 gigawatt, of which there is a lot of excess power, which currently is being sold at a very, very low price into the Brazilian system, because in Paraguay, they don't really know, they don't really have a market for it. So for us, it was an opportunity to use these domestic electrons and start producing hydrogen. And with the hydrogen, you make green ammonia and sell that to the agricultural sector, sell the ammonia as a fertilizer to an agricultural sector. And once you reach a certain size, you can start exporting. So it's all about having the power supply, the infrastructure in place. So I don't need to build new power supply. I don't need to build new electric lines. I don't need to build new port facilities. And you have a market on your doorstep that you can grow from. Whilst other places, and there are very big, ambitious projects of hydrogen, let's say in Australia or in Namibia, where it's a blank sheet of paper and they need to do everything, whilst we only need to do one small part of the value chain, which is the refining of electrons into molecules, hydrogen and ammonia, and sell them on to a market which exists today, which is the ammonia market, which is one of the largest traded chemical in the world.
Excellent. Well, let's take a closer look at each project, starting with Iceland. Obviously, the attraction there is the geothermal power. Please, can you tell me more about that operation?
So the idea in Iceland, as we started discussing with the Green Fuel team about a year and a half ago, was it's an island which has 99% of its electricity comes from renewable power, especially geothermal energy and hydroelectricity. And because it's an island, they have excess power, which currently, they are not using, which originally they had overbuilt the power supply because they were thinking they would have a lot of growth in the aluminum, to do green aluminum. So that market didn't prove to be deep enough. So you have excess power available. So what we looked at was a place where you have excess power, and that power, because it has nowhere else to go, isn't subject to, let's say, what we are seeing in Europe or the UK, where you have an arbitrage or deficit of excesses, where suddenly the price of power can be very volatile, whilst in Iceland it can be very stable because that power has nowhere else to go. So that was the first side. The other side, the market side, is Iceland is still part of the EU economic zone. And actually, it's a premium market as well in the EU, because they are desperate for the hydrogen and ammonia molecules, clearly to try to wean off Russian gas. So where the stage that we are, the project at the moment, we're looking at a first phase of about 30 to 40 megawatt. But more importantly, we have to negotiate a good power purchase agreement, which is what we have been doing for the past 6 months. And clearly, what's happening in Europe is, of course, affecting Iceland to an extent. So that we are still in the negotiation process on the power supply, but we already have a pretty good idea on the design of a project, on the market for the project. So today it's all about unlocking the power supply.
Superb. Well, moving on to the Paraguay project, what are your plans there? And you already touched on it. It was the hydroelectric availability there, I think, which brought you to that location.
That is absolutely correct, right? So you're looking at power from Itaipu, so the second largest hydro dam in the world. We're talking about a 14 gigawatt capacity, of which 7 gigawatt is dedicated to Paraguay. Now, the conundrum is, out of this 7 gigawatt, the country only uses between 30 to 40% of that share. So the strategy of the country on decarbonization, and especially on lowering expensive imports of hydrocarbons and fertilizer, is to use domestic electrons to create domestic molecules. So you have a capacity of power, of excess power, at a gigawatt scale. But the way we look at it, for us, it's all about moving very quickly and then build from that, right? So we were able to sign our first power purchase agreement of 60 megawatts at the site of Villeta, which is our phase one of a 400 megawatt potential, And what's interesting about Villeta is actually it's a substation right next to the port of Villeta, where you have all of the fertilizer importers as well as the exporters of agricultural products. It's right on the Paraná to Paraguay River, which goes into the Atlantic. So we are now into the front-end engineering and design stages, with the idea to get to final investment decision by the end of this year, and start the construction next year, so that we can start first production by end of 24, early 25. So again, it's about going pretty fast. I mean, 60 megawatt possibly doesn't sound big to a number of people. The reality is today the largest electrolyzer facility in the world is about 20 megawatt in operation. So we wanted to have something which was reasonably sized, where we can use existing technology, because a lot of people think, oh, hydrogen it's the new tech. Actually, it's it's been existing for a long time. Like solar energy has been existing for a long time before it really exploded. So for us, it's reasonable size project that we can fast track into production, and then grow from there in a number of phases.
So basically, scalable, get it going, and then scale up.
Exactly. Right. And because this is, if you start with 60, you start with something which is really well known, with an existing design. So you're not going to spend 2 years, 3 years in engineering and design like other projects have to do. And then indeed, by the time we scaled up to a gigawatt scale, the very, very large projects that we are seeing, or that we are hearing about in Australia and in Namibia, for example, we will only have just started. So it's an engineering. It's also a commercial way to look at things, right? We are very realistic that it's all great to try to be the first, but if you don't have a market on the other side, where do you create value for your early investors?
Yes, of course. And also, you've got another element to the business as well, Atome Mobility. What's that all about?
And so Atome Mobility came in a little bit earlier than expected, where we always had an idea to do Atome Mobility, which is, instead of focusing on large-scale ammonia, was also to look at the other side of the market, which was the mobility, which is, as you know, we have a number of hydrogen buses in London. Toyota has the Mirai car, which has just broken a record where, by using 5 kilograms of hydrogen, it drove over 1,000 kilometers. So again, it's very, the mobility side is quite existing, and we saw that opportunity in Paraguay, and in this case where the country has to spend a large amount of its income into subsidizing diesel imports, especially. Was about helping accelerate the decarbonization of the transport sector in Asunción, in the capital. And so we are essentially the first entrant in the country to also use, at a small scale, we're only talking about 1 megawatt of electrolyzer, to be able to kickstart the hydrogen into transport, obviously with the support of the Paraguayan government, as well as a number of private off-takers who are very keen into finding ways to reduce the diesel and fuel bills with obviously very competitive hydrogen, because we can produce it competitively thanks to the low cost of electricity. And of course, from a climate point of view, even though Paraguay itself, 100% of its electricity is green, its largest emitter is the transport sector. So they are very keen to reduce diesel subsidies and also reduce their carbon footprint. So it clearly seems like a win-win proposition, and a way for us to, again, get into early cash flow very quickly. We just ordered our first electrolyzer from CPH2, which is based in Doncaster, and we will be deploying it in the first half of 2023. So it's coming quite fast, and I think it's also going to be a very, very good test for us, actually, to help us even more accelerate even further the larger ammonia projects, as we will be testing essentially all of the importing of electrolyzers, connecting them, finding the right people on the engineering side that we will then deploy on the larger projects.
Excellent. Well, finally, in summary, please can you give the 3 core reasons you believe investors should consider Atome Energy right now?
So I would say number one, the thesis of what we are trying to do. No, it's that really is what separates us in our business plan. It's about going after a market, which is the fertilizer ammonia market, right? This is already a global commodity that we can sell our product to. And the way that we are going at it, which is ensuring that we are leveraging existing infrastructure so that our capital exposure remains extremely low. And we only have to focus on to one thing, which is what we do really well, which is transforming these electrons into hydrogen, into ammonia, into methanol, into urea. So again, having a product on the other side. Also by being realistically sized, right, to have these fast tracks view. I think the other side, it's clearly, again, it's because of what is the opportunity we're offering to the market, where today in the market, the reality is, why are people investing in technology is to produce the hydrogen and the ammonia. And today, on the London Stock Exchange, there is no other company that is offering you the exposure on the production side of hydrogen and ammonia. And then the last thing, it's a thesis that I used to do as an investor, where you can have the best project in the world. If you don't have a management to deliver it, it's not going to be doing very well. And I think we took a lot of time to put together the right management team, which is not only people which have expertise on the finance side, on the equity capital market side, but also on the operational side on the ground, right? And we took we took our time to find the right people at the board, where we've got Maria-Rose de Valadares, who used to be the International Energy Agency's hydrogen general manager for over 15 years. So she gives us, the entire view of hydrogen, and really educates the company on the promises and the disappointments, and help us accelerate our discussions. But importantly, on the ground, we have Paraguayan people who are extremely good at what they do. And our president for Atome Paraguay is Jim Spalding, who is, he used to be the general manager of Itaipu, the dam. He used to be Minister of Finance. He used to be heading the decarbonization strategy of the country. So he knows everything, both from a technical side as well as from the government side, which helps us accelerate. And of course, we have our chairman, who has Peter Levin, who has a long-standing experience into growing energy companies and successfully exiting them. So I think we put together a very complementary management, which will help us deliver our thesis and the market.
Superb. Well, it sounds like a very interesting company, especially with everything that's going on right now. So many thanks for your time today, Olivier.
No, thank you, Stuart. And, we talked about Paraguay and Iceland, but we are looking at other areas as well. So watch this space as we grow.
Super. Well, I hope we can have another update very soon. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.